She was a wonderful girl when it happened, and I always said that I was pro-choice in a grey way, as in if someone was raped and they were going to damage themselves carrying that child, then they should have a choice. But actually, my perspective has changed, and the reason it's changed is humans can overcome traumatic situations. We are very powerful, especially if we have a community to support us. Now, one of the reasons I changed is I understood what happens in an abortion procedure. So I want to play you some footage that rocked my soul, and especially seems I know my own children went through this.
This is a sofa clamp. A sofa clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and a ½ inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs. Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to the bowel, bladder, and other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can even lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time.
I will no longer do any more abortions. When you finally figure out that killing a baby that big for money is wrong, that it doesn't take you too long to figure out it doesn't matter if the baby is this big or this big or this big or maybe even this big, it's all the same. And I haven't done any since then, and I never will.
So, abortion is a very brutal procedure. Now, people will say that it's not a life, it's not a person. But I say that no one's thinking straight here. If somebody was in a coma and you knew they were going to wake up in 9 months, they are potential sentient life. What justification could we have for killing that person? Even if they were a newborn child and they entered into a coma and they said, oh, don't worry, they'll wake up at the age of 10 months. What justification would anybody have to kill that child when we know they are going to wake up? And that's why I've changed. The suffering that these unborn children go through when they are children is horrific. Torn limb from limb. In supposedly the safest place a child should be, the mother's womb. It doesn't sit right And even first stage abortions are done with suction, and they pull the fetus apart using a vacuum from a suction tube. Either way, the child is torn to pieces. Now, if you've had abortions, I feel your pain. I share it with you, I know. For those of you who regret it, you have to forgive yourself and move on. And I give thanks for the forgiveness that I received from those children of mine that didn't make it into this world, and from my God who offers me forgiveness. Now here's the problem, is the argument has moved to this idea that it's all about the woman's choice. It's so irate. But what about the woman inside the womb? Because it will be a woman. It is potential life. It's sentient potential life. What about their rights? What about the rights of the father? And people are so emotionally attached to the concept of women's rights, they never think about the baby. And I see it from the marches. One side is very, very disorganized and deranged. You see it. This attracts those characters. And I'm not saying all people who are pro-choice are like that, but a lot of them are. You see it. You know, they just seem to be very confused. And if you stop using your carnal mind, your ego, and getting so irate and attached and aggressive, and use your heart, things can change. Because when you see videos like that, I think it stimulates people's hearts. And they say, wow, there's got to be a better way than that. And there is. Children can be born and adopted. Parents can be counselled. Videos like that can be shown in schools to keep young men and women from using sex like a toy, like a pleasure tool, to keep it as something sacred. We were married 4 weeks before Fritzi got pregnant. I think the best thing I ever did was to realize that having children and using sex in the way I was as a young man was devoid of anything natural. Many animals mate for life. They don't cheat, because their mating comes from a place of love, not a place of flesh. We can join them in that higher moral stance regarding procreation and sex. We should. We're humans.